decided to walk up the wash from the mill site and found these cool cars. I love the grill on that one. Quite a few days without seeing anybody else. I even did a 55-mile ride on my motorcycle yesterday and saw one Jeep the whole ride. I guess the main part of the park is going to be a lot more crowded, as I just saw with that tour bus. Big difference between this park and White Sands and Great Sand Dunes is there's a dried mud bottom below these dunes, so you can easily walk through it. They named this field Devil's Cornfield because the arrowweed looks like a bunch of corn bundled up to dry after it's been harvested. They used an unusual name to suck in the tourists. Kind of like it.
The story here begins with a fellow named Aaron Winters and his wife Rosie. They lived in poverty in Ash Meadows area. They had a house out there, a little cabin. And they hadn't really heard of borax. If they did, they didn't know much about it and never really thought to make a living at it. But this fellow named Henry Spiller comes knocking on their door one day looking to fill his canteen. So they invited him in and they just kind of sitting around and chatting. And Henry Spiller kind of spilled the beans and talked too much. He was working for a fellow named William Coleman. And his job at the moment was to find new borax claims so William Coleman can build his empire.
Exploit them.
So he not only told Aaron Winters what borax looked like, who the claim was going to if he found one, how to test for it, all of that, and then he went on his way. And Aaron was like, "Hey Rosie, I think that stuff that we saw out in Death Valley is borax. The crystal structure is different than salt. It's different. I think it matches the description." So they came out here, and when it got dark, they built a fire. They got some sulfuric acid, put a little sulfuric acid, a little methanol, lit it on fire, and he's like, "By God, Rosie, she burns green. We're rich." Oh. So he got the claim for this, the claim for Texas Spring, and he contacted William Coleman, turned around and sold it for $20,000, and that was it. William Coleman was a businessman already. He was pretty well established. He had his fingers in a lot of pies. There's lots of investments here and there, and borax was pretty new to him. And he had a few sites, and he came out here to this one, and he bought those those rights, the claim from Aaron Winters, and he piped in water from Texas Spring over to here. This is a boiler. So what would happen is this boiler would heat up the water in this vat. Truckloads, or like wagon loads, of this white material was brought from the flats over here, dumped in, and that's Ulexite. Ulexite has calcium in it. So what they did was they added a soda ash, so sodium carbonate, and they dissolved them together. And then the sodium carbonate would dissolve, and the Ulexite would dissolve, and the calcium from the Ulexite would bind with the carbonate in the sodium carbonate and form calcium carbonate, which is lime, which settles out. So that was pulling the calcium out, and then what was left would crystallize as the temperature cooled down. So they would pipe from the crystallizing vat, or the boiling vats, down to crystallizing vats. The crystallization vats had metal rods going down inside, and so the borax would crystallize around the metal rods and around the edges of the tank, and they'd drain the tanks and scrape all of that off and haul it out, and they would do about 3 tons of borax a day.
Wow.
And that had to be transported somewhere. Nearest railroad was 165 miles away in Mojave. So you guys may be all familiar with the 20 mule team. This is where that originated. So it usually wasn't 20 mules, it was usually 18 mules and 2 horses. And they had 2 guys. They had a skinner and a swamper, and the skinner was the one who drove the mules, and the swamper was the assistant and the brakes. The total length of the team were 100 feet long. So imagine living out here in a canvas tent, and you've probably dug out subterranean chambers because it gets really hot here and there's extreme temperatures, and it helps to regulate that temperature. You've immigrated from China, and you're getting paid $1.30 a day. But in that time, $1.30 was just under $40 in today's wages.